Today we're making this broccoli, cheese, and bacon quiche recipe, perfect for the holidays. Hi, I'm Tara with Simply Made Eats and welcome to my channel. Today I'm sharing this really easy quiche recipe. I know that quiche can sometimes be intimidating. I promise this one is so simple. We're using a store-bought pie crust, which saves on time. It's a huge shortcut in this one. We're gonna have lots of cheese, bacon, sauteed broccoli and garlic. This one's so good, so keep on watching. The first thing we want to do is get our oven preheated to 375 degrees. We're also going to do a little bit of prep work. It's not too crazy, but the best thing about this recipe is if you want to save time on the actual holiday, like if you're going to make it Thanksgiving or Christmas, you can always prep all the ingredients before, which makes it really easy the day of. You can just throw everything right in the pie crust and just pop it in the oven. For our prep work, we're gonna start by chopping up our broccoli. I like to cut this really nice and small. Go ahead and cut off all the stems. The reason why I like to do this small is because we're gonna saute it a little bit and then we're gonna put it into our egg mixture, and I want it fully cooked. I don't want anybody getting any crunch from that broccoli. We're also gonna chop up a shallot, and you wanna dice this really nice and fine. We just need about 2 tablespoons. Next up, we've got 2 cloves of garlic, of course. We're gonna mince this up just for some extra flavor. We are also gonna chop up a teaspoon of fresh parsley. I like flat leaf for this recipe. You can also leave it off if you don't want it. It's just to top it at the very end right before serving, just to add a little bit of color. Next up, we're gonna chop up our bacon. So I'm just using 6 strips of original bacon. You don't wanna use any flavored bacon here. And then we're gonna chop this up into 1-inch pieces. You also want to peel those apart. If you're cutting it, like if it's 6 that are layered together, make sure you peel each of the pieces apart just so everything gets cooked evenly in the pan. Next up, we're going to shred our cheese. I've got a cup of cheddar cheese. I'm using a Cabot aged white cheddar, but you can use any kind of cheddar cheese for this. I'm also going to grate up some Parmesan cheese, and it's best to look for the Parmesan Reggiano. It's really nice and extra nutty. It's probably the most expensive thing that I buy for my fridge, but I love it. It's my favorite ingredient ever. And I like to do this on the fine setting. Next, we're going to get started with our pie crust. You only need 1 of the pie crust. If you're buying store-bought, you just need to do 1 of these. You can also definitely use homemade pie dough if you have a recipe that you love. That's totally fine too. I have my store-bought pie crust. I'm gonna leave it in the package for a second, and we're gonna be using a 9-inch pie plate, which is just their standard size. I like to spray mine with just a little bit of vegetable oil, just in the bottom. This one's almost done. I do not want my quiche sticking at the very end, so I like to do this. Then we're just gonna take our pie crust and unwrap it. You wanna make sure you leave it in the fridge until right before you use it. That's gonna be the easiest way to work with. And then it really just unfolds super simple. I love store-bought pie dough because sometimes the homemade stuff, like I use it for my apple pies and stuff, but it is tricky to work with sometimes. You gotta roll it out, do all kinds of special stuff. This one is just gonna really sit perfectly in here. Next, I'm gonna take a fork and just give it a few pricks around the bottom. This just helps it not puff up too much. Then we're gonna set this aside and get started on our sauteed broccoli, and we're gonna make our bacon too. We're gonna add that bacon to a large skillet over medium-low heat, and we wanna cook this for about 6 to 7 minutes, maybe 8, just to get it nice and crispy. One of the things I love about quiche is you can always substitute out like the cheeses. You could do like Gruyere cheese with onions, or you could use ham instead of bacon. You could also do a vegetarian version on this. If you want to leave the bacon out completely, just make sure you use a tablespoon of oil before you cook in that broccoli. Also, roasted red peppers would be delicious in this. There's like so many flavor combinations that really make it delicious. Also, if you're still watching, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. It shares it with the YouTube community, and I'm super appreciative of that. Now back to the recipe. Once it's all finished cooking, we're gonna transfer it to a paper towel lined plate, and then we're gonna discard the grease from the pan. We just wanna keep about 1 tablespoon in the pan because we're gonna use that to cook our broccoli. Now it's time to return the skillet back to the stovetop over medium-low heat. We're gonna add in our broccoli, and I'm gonna cover this for about 3 minutes just so it gets a little bit steamy in there and really cooks them. They're super small, so it doesn't take long. Next, we're gonna add in our shallot and garlic. Stir that up. We're gonna cook it for about 2 minutes. Then add in the bacon. We're gonna turn the heat off and add in Dijon mustard for a little bit of tanginess. I'm gonna transfer this to a plate just to cool off for a few minutes before we add it into our quiche, because I don't want it like cooking those eggs at all before the actual oven does it. As our broccoli is cooling off, we're gonna get our eggs and milk whisked together. So I'm gonna be using 5 eggs for this recipe. Quiche is really egg heavy, So we need 5 eggs. And these are large eggs too. I've kept them in the fridge until right before I use them. It's not like baking where we need to have room temperature eggs. We're good with nice and cold ones here. It's funny, I actually didn't even eat quiche at all until last year. I always thought it was kind of gross. I'm not huge on eggs. So I was like, ooh, I don't like the idea of it. And we went to this bakery last year and my mom was just raving about the broccoli and cheese quiche they had. And I was like, okay, that definitely changed my mind because it was seriously so good. And this one's even better because it has bacon in it. How can you go wrong with bacon? Next, we're gonna be adding 3/4 cup of whole milk. I like the whole milk for this one just because it has a lot of fat in it and it's just good. And then same thing with the cream. I've got 1/4 cup of heavy cream. We're adding this for fat and richness too. Next up, I just have a little bit of salt, about 1/2 teaspoon, and we're gonna be using about 1/4 teaspoon, maybe 1/8 teaspoon of black pepper. You could also do crushed red pepper flakes in this if you like spicy. And then we want to just give this a really nice whisk until it's all combined. It's almost like custard, it's nice and thick. And you want to make sure that this is really nice and mixed. You don't want to see any eggs in there. I always just leave my whisk in here, that way I can just stir it up one more time before I pour it into my pie crust. Next up, we're gonna start by layering everything into our quiche. It sounds kind of weird not just to mix it all together, but we're actually gonna layer it and then it's all gonna kind of float as it bakes and mix together that way. So we're gonna first start with our broccoli and bacon. You can use your hands a little bit too. Just make sure that you have a little bit of broccoli and bacon everywhere. It should cover pretty much the bottom of the pan. Next, we're gonna sprinkle in our cheese, and I like to leave a tiny bit for the topping. So I'm gonna use probably about 2/3 cup of cheddar right now, and I'm just gonna sprinkle it all over the top of that. And same thing with the parmesan, I like to save a little bit of that too. So we're gonna just sprinkle on this. This is gonna be so good. I can't wait to eat it. Last but not least, we're gonna add our egg mixture right over the top. Just pour it on. Once we get that custard mixture in here, we're just gonna go ahead and top it with the rest of our cheese. Next up, this is totally optional, but I'm just gonna give it a little crimp around the edges. Store-bought dough is super circular, obviously, so you don't have to do this. Then we're gonna stick it in the oven for 35 to 40 minutes until we get a nice clean toothpick coming out. And I want you to check it around 30 minutes. If it starts to get a little bit too brown, you need to move it to the lower rack and just tin it with a little bit of foil. The quiche just came out of the oven and it smells so good and it looks amazing. The cheese on top is really nice and golden brown, which is exactly what I wanted. This is honestly the perfect holiday recipe. I'm just gonna top it with a little bit of fresh parsley just to add some color. I don't wanna add too much of it. You can see the broccoli came through too, which is what we wanted, so that's gonna add a little bit of green to it as well. Yum. And that's it, we're all done with this easy broccoli, bacon, and cheese quiche. It's a mouthful, but it's so yummy. I hope you guys try this one this Christmas or for Thanksgiving. It's like the perfect brunch recipe. Absolutely fantastic for any kind of family gathering. This is gonna do 8 slices, so everybody's gonna get nice and full for breakfast or brunch. I hope you guys enjoy this one. Thanks so much for being here. Make sure to give this video a like and make sure to subscribe for new recipes every single week. I love sharing them with you and thanks for being here. Thanks so much. Bye.